We're live. Yes, we are. How's everybody doing? How can we see this? Ooh, gotta turn that off. Sorry for that. How's it going? All right. So, I got some pots to throw today. Thought we'd do the first live stream. So, if you listen to the last YouTube video, I said, hey, I should do a live stream because I've had some people reach out and say, you know, we try and get answers to questions and I don't really respond all the time, and that's my bad. I used to respond to everything, but then as we've grown, then it's been a little bit overwhelming to try and respond to all the questions on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everything. So I've decided that I prioritize making pots, spending time with my family, over like sitting down and responding to all the comments. So I thought once a week live I could do a YouTube video and you guys could join and ask any questions and watch me work. So I have my computer set up here so I can read questions, and I have my phone there with the camera. So I'm gonna throw some pots and I will answer as many questions as you guys have. Someone said, can I recommend a wheel? Thank you guys, everybody, for joining. First off, appreciate it. Throwing a few pots already today, getting a little warmed up. And then, yeah. So, can you recommend, Chris Weber said, can I recommend a wheel? So I've used a few different wheels. This currently right now is a Scott SSX Revolution, which Scott was kind enough to send me, and I love it. I've thrown thousands of pots, probably close to over 5,000 pots on this wheel, and it's great. I also had a Brent before this, like one of those yellow Brents, and that was really nice too. Brent Shimpo, I've thrown on one of those. That's really nice. Honestly, like the big brands, Scott, can't go wrong. Amico, Brent, Shimpo, can't go wrong. Those Clay Boss is good. Somebody says, how long have you been throwing? I started throwing back in 2009. So what is that, 11 or 12 years I've basically been throwing. Can I recommend a good type of clay? So there are so many different kinds of clay, and it really depends on what you want to, what temperature you want to fire to, how you want it to feel, if you're throwing, if you're hand building, like what type of work. Do you want it to look really like clean and porcelain looking, or do you want it to look more rough? So it does have it's really hard to answer that question, because most of the types of clay that you can buy are really good, but they might be good for different types of things, right? So there's low fire clay, high fire clay. You know, this is B clay from Continental Clay, and it's a really nice clay. I love all the glaze, how the glazes look on it, how the glazes react to it. I've tried other clay from Continental and other companies, and this one's just my favorite right now. But, you know, like for the wood fire that I did in North Carolina, I had other types of clay, so it's a really hard question to answer. There's lots of different, you got to try them, you got to figure out what kind of work you want to do, ask around, you know, which is what you're doing. So I told you what kind of clay I'm using. That doesn't mean that's what's the best for you or your work or what you want to do. I don't think I missed any. Color clay, yes, Mason Stains color clay. Have you taught your oldest to throw? I haven't taught Ryder yet. I mean, Ryder's thrown a little bit, but he does have a big interest in being in the studio with me. So we'll probably get him on the wheel here this summer, a little more. Would you consider streaming on Instagram too? Yeah, I have streamed on Instagram before. I just thought I would do it on YouTube I don't know why, because YouTube is where it's kind of prioritized. Oh, there's the spiral mug. So for this, what type of tools do I use? The tools really just depend on what I'm making. Right now I'm making the foot of this mug with just a wood rib. Like I was making these straight-sided mugs, so I used this metal rib for that. I like these mud tool throwing sponges a lot. I have a couple different kinds of metal ribs. They're really cheap. So that's basically it. Can you give us weight? Yeah, the weight for this mug was 3/4 pound. Sorry, is it more cost effective to make glazes? It's much more cost effective to make your own glazes with raw materials. Yeah, that's just raw materials. Raw materials for glazes are really inexpensive, so you can make glazes for really cheap. But then you have to make them, and you have to have recipes, and you have to test, and you have to know a little more about the chemistry side of things. So that'll be about a 12-ounce mugs. Any new artists you're interviewing? I have a couple ideas for the new artists. Do you teach others or have clay classes? I just basically do the YouTube channel, so you can learn a lot of stuff from the YouTube channel. I try and teach as much on there. Wow, lots of questions. Thank you guys. I'm missing some. Sorry, if I miss you, then you might have to type it up again if you're really curious. My throwing technique has definitely changed over the years. I think it's gotten way better. My favorite mug to make is probably the one that I'm making right now, these spiral mugs. I love just doing that spiral action at the end. The glazes for my Northern Lights combo is black from Minnesota clay, metallic green from Minnesota clay, and then buttercream from Continental clay. You just started making glazes and it's great. Is there clay all over your washer and dryer? There's clay all over my house. I try and keep it pretty clean though. Sweet, you got your mug in the mail. How are you? I love the scut wheel. The scut wheel has been great for me. When am I building the wood kiln? That's the big question, isn't it? How thick are the mugs with the swirl before you do the swirl? I mean, I make the mugs the same thickness no matter what, and it's kind of as thin as possible with still being able to like keep the shape, you know, which is going to be, you know, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever. Yeah, buttercream does. I used to use buttercream on everything before I started using Mako glazes, which I really do love. Why am I so open and generous when sharing glaze combos? Because, you know, honestly, I love just trying new combos. So I know, like, the ones that I've done in the past, I'm just going to find new ones that I like. So I'm like, why not share with other people? And, you know, as long as people are still buying my stuff, I'll share everything. I mean, I guess I'll just, even if you don't buy my stuff, I'll still share. I don't really have any reason to, like, keep it a secret. Yeah, my foot is on the speed thing right now, like, at all times. This is going to make me really good at throwing while I'm reading questions. I might have to stop throwing and just answer. Are you really? I'm planning a meetup this summer, in August, hopefully. And it's not really like, I think people misunderstood me when I spoke in that video. I kind of said, well, whatever I said, people thought it was going to be a workshop, but it's actually going to be more like a sale where you can come and buy stuff, but then I'll also throw and talk and like have pots that you can glaze your own, you know? Like I was going to have like 100 mugs that were all numbered, and then you could buy it and choose the glaze that's going to go on it. So then we'd have all the glazes out, and you could be like, I want to try this glaze and this glaze, and I would either do it, or if it's simple, you know, you can do it. And then you'd write down your address so that when it's done, then I could ship it to you after that. So that is a kind of interesting idea. I thought it would be fun. Tips on, sorry, I'm missing some questions. I know I am. So you'll just, if you're super eager to get it answered, don't do the wood kiln. The final product is more than the ingredients. EC should moderate for me. That is a really good idea. I didn't put a spiral in this. What am I doing? You don't need winterwood on a Norse blue. Yeah, like, I know people often say like you just put light flux on stuff. I've always been able to like accomplish the dripping that I want with just multiple layers. And so I know the flux does a really good job. of forcing the glazed combos to drip, and I just haven't had to like really use it yet. I know I should make other stuff, but mugs they just sell so well, and I really don't mind making them. I like them, so it's hard. I have been making some bigger stuff. If you follow my Instagram or whatever, I'll do some videos on it pretty soon. But I have a couple big vases that I've been making, which has been fun. I have had apprentices in the past. I've also had apprentices in the past that didn't really work out. And so most of the time I want to make sure they're local and that they start part-time. So I have an intern apprentice right now actually that is helping me for the summer. So tips on starting a business after college. I think my biggest tip is to just, you know, start doing something, selling somewhere, like posting on social media somewhere, and then, you know, evaluate how it goes, what you think about it, how you think you're doing, and then like go to the next thing and try that. You know, like for example, before I ever started a YouTube channel, I started doing live streams on Facebook, like I had seen some other potters do. Just like this, where I'd like, you know, and we had 8 people watching, maybe 10 people watching sometimes. And after a while I was like, you know, I don't think that this is where I want to focus my time doing these Facebook Live videos. So that's when I kind of was like, I'm going to do YouTube videos where I have to actually think about the videos and edit them. And so, and I tried lots of different things before I found, you know, the YouTube channel, the Jonthepotter YouTube thing. That really worked out. And it's like just paired well with what I wanted to be doing, with what was needed on, you know, like clearly there was some people that were interested in what I was doing. So yeah. Sorry. Tips on growing a YouTube channel. You know, I really got into growing my YouTube channel, you know, when I started it, and I've focused changing, like the algorithms changing, what you need in your YouTube channel. So I'm definitely not up on like the most up-to-date information. But I would say you really got to be passionate about it, right? You got to, like when I was starting the YouTube channel, that's like all I thought about was, what am I going to make for my next video? Like, how am I going to get better at making videos? And so you got to like, I always say you got to fall in love with YouTube, just like you fell in love with making pots. Or if you're making a YouTube channel about whatever it is that you love, you also need to love making videos and making YouTube work as much as you love that thing that you're doing. So these pots might be kind of iffy. I'm trying to really do the multitasking thing. There we go. Florian Gadsby. I know, when I started his YouTube, I reached out to him and I was like, dude, I always wanted to be the best like cinematic potter on YouTube, but I don't think I am anymore. I think he is. His videos are just unbelievable. I just found your channel. You're my biggest fan, Matthew Kelly. Thanks, Matthew. Do you feel the spirituality? I do. I definitely, when I'm just throwing, it's a very meditative practice for me. Tips for a hobby potter who's becoming overrun with pottery. Oh, you got to focus on selling it. You got to figure out what your outlets are, you know? Are you going to art fairs? Are you selling online? Are you building a social media? Like, you know, I always say as an artist, if you want to focus on selling, you have to spend as much time thinking about how you're going to sell as you do thinking about, you know, the work that you make. Where do I recommend buying a Goodwill? So many questions about wheels. I got to do a video on that. This wheel was from Scott. You can order them online. Your local clay supplier, like Continental Clay, is the one around here. They sell wheels. You can also find used wheels on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, that sort of thing. That's where I got my first wheel. I have thrown pottery from local clay. When we dug up this studio, like when they dug the studio to get it, there was a bunch of clay, and it's low fire clay. I tried firing it up to cone 6 and it just melted. So I have made clay from or I have made pots. I just saw my dad commented about my hat, and it is his company, Dry Dock. My dad has a YouTube channel. Go follow him, Tim Schmidt, Dry Dock. Do you make the sound effects when you're alone? I probably do. Wheels or kilns? I mean, everything that I have, both wheel and kiln, is scut. So I love the scut kilns. I have a scut 1027, I have a scut 818, I have a scut 1218. So I got 3 scut kilns and a scut wheel. So I guess I gotta recommend those. That's what I use. I know, I mean, there's great kilns and wheels out there. Brent's are good. L&L kilns are really good, I've heard. How do I find my niche? How do you find your niche is a good question. I always think that, am I saying that a lot? I always say. I think that finding your like kind of niche is finding that overlap of what you like to make, you know, what is challenging, like what, you know, is fueling you, and then also what people want to buy. You're like trying to find that balance, because you might like making something that no one wants to buy, and that's not going to work out. And you might not want to make something that people want to buy, and that's not going to work out either. So you got to find that thing or those things that people want to buy and that you enjoy making. And it's not easy, and I can't tell you exactly how to do it. And I continue to search for that. All right, here's the spiral before I answer the next set of questions. See, I don't just make those noises for the YouTube channel for no reason. I actually do it in real life. All right, this is bee clay. My first pot I ever made, I don't know if it exists anymore. If it does, it's at my parents' house. Do you still have any pots you made in high school? There are a few. One pot, I should show this on a YouTube video because it's hilarious. I have a face, like a head that I made. So we had to make a balloon pot where you like had a balloon full and then you covered it outside with clay, and then you had to make something with that. So some people would like make it and then cut it in half and make bowls. But I made a head, like a human head, and it's real bad. Real bad. The sponge on a stick? Yeah, that's just for, you know, skinnier vessels that I have fairly large hands, so sometimes I'm making skinnier pots and I don't want to stick it all the way in. Like normally if I can, then I'll just use this to sop up all the water out of there, but sometimes I use the bigger sponge. Can you make a relief carve on clay? I'm not sure what you mean exactly by that question, but you know, that's like an example of a carved mug that I like to make. This one was wood-fired with Matthew Kelly. If you haven't seen those videos, I definitely recommend them. Is there something you want to achieve in pottery? I think you achieved everything. Oh, I definitely have not achieved everything. I think that's one thing that's like so great about pottery is that I think you can do it for your whole life and not try everything, you know? I think Matthew Kelly said this when I was there. He had someone that said, you'll run out of days before you run out of ideas when it comes to pottery, because the possibilities are just so endless. You can try new clay, new glazes, new firing techniques, new firing temperatures, you know, all the glazing techniques. You can spray, you can dip, you can pour, you can paint, and then any combination of any of those things. I'll run out of days before I run out of ideas. Do I get upset when I see others copy your work? I don't get upset when I see people copy my work at all, because when I started the YouTube channel, that was part of what I wanted to do, is share everything I have so that people can learn from me. So that would be kind of weird if I got upset if people were actually doing, you know, what I was freely giving out as instruction or advice. The only thing that does annoy me every once in a while is if I see someone that takes something that I do and then like tries to make an entire business or a whole line of pots or whatever with exactly what I was already doing. Like for example, you know, the Minnesota mug thing, I really feel like I was the first one that started doing that. And then I know that there have been other potters that have started doing it since then, which that doesn't even really bother me either, like, because that's pretty, you know, it doesn't really bother me. No, it doesn't really bother me. Thank you. Just FYI, I don't know what that said. When you were here, I was amazing how much bigger your hands were than mine. I do have large hands, I think. How do you handle managing Mocha Monkey and making pots and time with your family? You know, Mocha Monkey, I spent many years getting that business to a point where it was pretty much running without me at all. And that comes down to the people. So I have my best friend Sam, who's the manager of the Mocha Monkeys. He does all the managing for all 3 stores. And he basically does everything. So that's allows me to focus on the pottery and Jonthepotter stuff. Here's the spiral. And then for each location we have a manager as well, and we just have a bunch of great staff. I mean, we fluctuate from 40 to 50 people on staff at Mocha Monkey at any given time, and they're all amazing. So they allow me to focus on what I like to do and hang out with my family. How did you get into the craft? It seems like you need a wheel and a kiln. You can start with a class, or you can start by watching videos. You can start by hand building instead of throwing, so you don't need a wheel. You can start by renting kiln space. I have a video. I have a video called like the 10 steps to becoming a potter, and that is a great video to watch if you're like, how do I get started and what can I do to get better without like spending my whole life savings on building a studio? Because it's to get to this point, and you know, you see me now and you think like this is probably the way that you have to do pottery, but it's not. You know, the first studio that I had was in my parents' basement, and I bought a used wheel for $600 and a used kiln for $200. And then my parents were nice enough to say they would install the electricity for the kiln. And then, so for my, you know, the first studio that I ever had cost me about $1,000, but it was tiny and it was nothing, but it was enough. And then my next studio was probably cost me $4,000 or $5,000, and it was in the basement of a coffee shop. And it was also terrible, you know, and that was the first 8 years of my pottery career. And now, finally, after I'd made enough pots and I'd made enough money on selling pottery, I was able to build a really nice studio. So this is definitely not, you know, this is step 10 of how to, you know, have a studio that it works really well and is nice and separate from your house space. But lots of people have studios in their garage or studios in their basement or whatever. So you don't have to like invest all the money up front. What is the square block? So these bats, they're from Continental clay, and they're sweet. They're made of like some composite wood. And what it does, opposed to like these plastic ones, which don't absorb any water, these will absorb water, so the bases of the mugs can dry a little more evenly. And then the square allows you to set more up, you know? Like I can get 10 on a shelf instead of if I was throwing on these like large circle ones, which I used to throw a lot on. You know, I'd probably only be able to get 4 on one. So it's just for space that the square. Tips for utilizing a local potter's kiln. Yeah, I don't have any experience with that, so I can't really answer that, but I would just, you know, be respectful. Like, I had a lady that used to fire stuff in my kiln every once in a while, and one time she had a pot that just dripped off like crazy. And it kind of ruined the kiln shelf, and I kind of was like, hey, you know, like, would you be willing to reimburse me for that kiln shelf? Like, your pot's kind of ruined it. And she did, but I don't think she actually ended up firing with me ever again after that, so she must have gotten a little offended. Sorry. But yeah, just be respectful. Yeah, I'd be really conservative because grinding kiln shelves and getting glaze off of stuff is not the most fun thing in the world. Do I have any other pottery or ceramic book recommendations? There's a lot of great pottery books out there. But there's also so many free resources on the internet too, you know, like watching my YouTube channel, Matthew Kelly's YouTube channel, Earth Nation Ceramics YouTube channel, like even a lot of Instagram. If you follow people, there's super generous people out there with all their information. Tim C, if you join those Facebook groups, like Clay Buddies, Pottery Heads, those are great. You can search for any questions you have. And sorry if I'm missing questions. Would I like to do another video where I talk about the pots? That would be cool. That was kind of fun. I did that a long time ago where I had people submit pots and then I kind of critiqued them. That video, and it took me a ton of time to edit, so that I think it was like 30 minutes long, and I think that's why I haven't done another one. Because like collecting all those photos from people was not my idea of fun. I took a ceramics class. Do you layer Mako? I do. I do layer Mako with other glazes. I mean, I basically use mostly all Mako now. So there are a few, like the Continental Clay Buttercream I've layered. I just took that one to Mocha, so I don't have an example. But how frequently are you supposed to? Someone asked how frequently you're supposed to clean out your wheel pad. And that is total personal preference. I know there's potters that clean it every single time they use it, and there's potters that literally never clean it, like Matthew Kelly. I clean mine maybe once a month, maybe. 10 times a year I probably clean it. But, I mean, it takes me an extra 10 minutes to clean it out. I could throw 4 extra mugs every time I clean it. That's 4 mugs a day if I clean it every day. And it doesn't bug me to have a little clay in there. It's easy to clean it out enough. So that's totally up to you how frequently you want to clean your wheel. Yeah, the ASMR videos they just take forever for me to film. So if I could do an ASMR video once a week, I would. I'm sure I'd have 1 million subscribers, but I can't do it all. Yeah. The Scut 818, someone just asked a question about that. I got it as like a little test kiln. I could probably fit about 30 mugs in that thing if I really packed it tight. Maybe 30 is a little much, 25 maybe. Kilns do not typically work on a normal, you need like 220. So you gotta have an electrician come and wire it for you, which can be expensive. My favorite tool ever. Someone asked. I don't know. I mean, for a long time, I really loved that tool that Old Forge Creations made. Let's see if I can find one. This one where it creates that base. But since I was in North Carolina, I've been doing it Matthew Kelly's way a little bit more. Probably this Mud Tools throwing sponge. I really like that. Or if you consider the Kiln a tool, that's definitely my favorite. The Kiln is what makes the magic happen. Couldn't do any of this without the Kiln. Standing versus sitting, someone just asked. That is the video for this Sunday. I just filmed it yesterday, so stay tuned. Watch the video that comes out on Sunday. I still have to edit it. But it's why I stand and throw versus sitting. But if you don't want to watch the video, then I'll just tell you now. Basically, I like it because it's a little better on your back and like for your body. And the other reason is because you're so much more mobile. You can see how easy it is for me to like move stuff there. So, but still check out the video on Sunday. If you don't mind. That was not a great spiral, but it'll end up looking fine, I'm sure. The solar panels are great. Solar panels are covering all of our electricity in the studio for this summer. Once the days are longer and the sun is shining. Sun is shining right now. Isn't that cool? The sun right now is powering the wheel that I'm using. So yeah, we're producing way more solar power than we need right now, but it's a net grid system, so it goes back and then we get credit for whatever we aren't using. But in like December, January, when the days are short and the sun is lower, we won't produce as much as we use. So I'm hoping that when you look at the whole year, it will offset all of our power, but we shall see. How long did it take me to be able to center in seconds? A few years, at least. Maybe 1,000 pots, 2,000 pots. I don't know. Centering is still hit or miss. It takes time. It is really something that just takes a ton of clay. Would I recommend electric or kick? I have not used a kick wheel as much, so I would certainly, I mean, you can see I do everything with an electric wheel, so kick wheels are cool. I mean, shout out to Joel Jericho, he does everything on a kick wheel, and that is BA. I couldn't do it. I mean, I'm sure if I focused on it for a while, I'd maybe be fine at it, but I've never tried throwing something with my feet. But that sounds like a good YouTube video. Sounds kind of gross. But, you know. My wife is definitely involved. She helps a lot, mostly with packing and shipping boxes, and with the artistic design and the, like, being a consultant for me to just throw ideas off. But since we have 2 kids at home and she has her own stuff that she's interested in, she doesn't do as much as she did. She used to put all the Minnesotas on all the Minnesota mugs that we would make. We make a ton of Minnesota mugs still, but she used to cut them all out and put them on the mugs. How am I liking that Pug Mill? You know, to be honest, I had a little issues with it. I can chat with you later about it, but it was like a lot of the pots that were, right away I really liked it, but then I don't know if it was the clay that was going through there, but it kind of was like break, and anyway, so I like it still, but this is not from the Pug Mill. All right, spiral. Is the height of the wheel adjustable? It's not really adjustable. I have like 2x4s right underneath the feet to make it slightly taller than it'll go. But it's kind of just a one size fits. Will a clear glaze drip in the kiln like regular colored glazes? Yeah, if a clear glaze is thick enough, it'll drip. It might crawl. I mean, I know clear glazes often aren't really meant to be that thick, so it might crawl or really, I don't know. But you can use a clear glaze is just like other glazes. Do I pot on the wheel every day? I'm not always on the wheel every day, but I would say like probably 4 or 5 days out of the week I am throwing some kind of pots. Wait, what's a Pug Mill, Andy says. This is a Pug Mill right here, and what it does is you put clay in and it like basically homogenizes it. It basically like runs it through and makes it ready to work. You know, if you have a bunch of clay that's different consistencies, or you have whatever, if your clay isn't in a super workable state, the Pug Mill does that. And this is a pretty small Pug Mill. There's ones that are way bigger and work better. Yeah. How are you positioning your fingers to make the spiral? I'll talk it through when I do it this next time. Who is someone I look up to in the pottery industry? Oh, there's a lot of people. Right now, I mean, Kurt Hammerly is like, what he has done with his business over the past 3 years has been so fun to watch. And how he just like, his testing and his, just how he goes about, how he gets all of his designs and 3D printing and all that stuff is just so fascinating to me. And his glazes too, like, you know, from somebody that uses a lot of glazes but doesn't really record that much, like I just do a lot from what I've learned in my brain and like looking back and guessing. He just keeps such methodical track of all the glazes that he does. And then he can go back at any time and like be like, I want to do this again. So I really respect that. His process is cool. I don't do much hand building. I just love throwing on the wheel so much. I'm going to talk about how I do the spiral on this next one once I get it ready to. Someone said something, have you decided about something, and I didn't see it. Thank you. Thanks everybody for stopping by. All right, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of using this rib to shape it, to make sure that it's really that nice like hourglass shape. And then it gets all the extra slip off there, and then I'll get it wet again. And then now to do the spiral, what I'm kind of doing is I'm using 2 fingers on the inside, and then I focus on 1 finger on the outside, which you can do it with just 1 and 1, but I do 2. And so I'm kind of pushing in with this finger into this, and then I go up slightly faster than you do for a normal pull. So when you pull, you know, you want to make sure the wheel goes around at least once before you go up, so that you pull the clay up consistently. Whereas with the spiral, you're actually pulling up faster, so the wheel hasn't gone around a full revolution when you're going up, if that makes sense. I think that might be the best way I've ever explained it. So I go like this, and now I start going up quicker than the wheel is spinning around. You know, usually when you're doing a normal pull where you pull up the clay, you're pulling up about as fast as the wheel is spinning around because you want the revolution to go around once, I think. Someone should, if you're watching and that makes any sense or no sense, then let me know, because I kind of just came up with that on the fly. I really love these spiral mugs. They're nice. They're nice and fun to throw. It's fun to have that little like spiral action that totally makes it cool at the end. But I've thrown 10 of those, so maybe I'll change shapes now. That's kind of what I do. I throw 10 or 20 of one shape, and then I'll switch just because I have ADD. Undiagnosed. What do you think? Anyone have a shape that you think I should make? I heard you were planning on going to Joel Cherico. I am planning on going to Joel. He's been the next one probably because he is in Minnesota, so I don't have to drive 18 and a half hours like I did in North Carolina. I can just drive like an hour to go to Joel. Do you plan to have an apprentice? I have had probably 5 apprentice type people. But they're pretty part-time, and so I wouldn't want anyone to move to Minnesota to be my apprentice. Like, I have them be, you know, they spend maybe 15 to 20 hours a week, and they're kind of just apprentices / employees. I mean, they're paid. I love the spiral. Talk of doing mini road trips. Will you consider doing that again? Yeah. Well, I just was in North Carolina, and that was a big road trip to Matthew Kelly's studio. We did like 4 or 5 videos on that. And then I have some other plans. I mean, it's only going to be maybe once or twice a year that I would do it, so. A wide squatty cup. How soon after? That's a really common question that I get, and the answer depends on the time of year. Like during the winter, stuff dries so fast that I can flip it over, and I'll throw it, and like an hour later I can come back and wire it. And I wire it. Some people wire it right away, but I always let it dry a little bit and then wire it. But right now it might be 4 or 5 hours before I can do it, so it really depends. Can you make clay projects with 3D imaging? Yeah, there's 3D clay printers that you can use. Go follow Kurt Hammerly on Instagram. He does tons of 3D printed clay projects. Yeah, have I tried funky handles? I've tried different kinds of handles, not anything too crazy. I mean, I like the stuff that I make, is a pretty simple form, and I really focus on the glaze combinations being kind of the wow factor instead of the forms and the shapes. But and I guess the carved ones are, I don't know, I just kind of go where the wind blows me, I guess. The one thing helped grow my business when we first started. Well, I guess you have to talk about which business we're talking about. The coffee shops was the first business that I had. right out of college where I sold pottery there, and then now I would consider kind of like my second bigger business in the YouTube channel, and I think for me the biggest thing, that's a hard question. YouTube, getting into the YouTube channel, that was a game changer for the pottery online, obviously, and that's, you guys are all watching that right now. All right, see, I was not focusing on that one. You can tell that was not as a good one. Can you rehydrate semi-dried clay? Yes, you can. If you what's really easy, if you let it dry totally and then you put it in water, then it like dissolves super fast into like slip. You know, all this at the bottom here, this is all like wet clay. And then if you let that dry, it'll become at a certain point, it'll become the consistency of the clay that's ready to be worked. Make one like Florian Gadsby. Not exactly sure what Florian Gadsby's mugs all look like off the top of my head. I meant clay, selling pottery. Yeah, the biggest thing for me, the biggest thing was the YouTube channel for the clay business. And or the new studio, you know, like making the mugs or making the pottery out of the old studio at Mocha Monkey was just not great. I always felt like I needed to like manage the amount of time I spent in there because it wasn't the cleanest studio in the world and didn't have the best ventilation and just wasn't super healthy. If I were to build my studio now, would I make any changes? That's a good question. I'd maybe put a bathroom in, just because that was a little expensive to do right away, so I decided not to do it. And now I have people working here with me sometimes, and I wish they didn't have to like run inside my house to go to the bathroom. But going back, you know, if that was an extra 15 grand or 10 grand or whatever I made it, I probably would have said no still. I probably would have made it a little bigger. More opportunity for the future, like growth of, you know, do I want to put a gas kiln in here? But I suppose I could put a gas kiln outside. What's the most valuable thing you've learned from the wood firing? I think someone asked what's the most valuable thing I learned from the wood firing from Matthew Kelly. Probably, you know, it's something that I already knew, but experiencing it was a whole nother level of the amount of variety that you can get from different types of firing atmospheres and how fun it is. That was probably the biggest thing. It was just like, it's not always what's the easiest and most profitable and whatever, but it's also about the experience and the story behind like how stuff was made is super important. How long you leave a bone dry before firing? Well, most of the stuff I fire, I preheat it in the kiln, so I can put it in there a little wet, and if you preheat it, then it'll be fine. So I don't really, but you know, stuff will explode that way too. But mugs you can usually do mugs fine. Bigger pieces, you gotta make sure they're dry, or you gotta preheat it for a long time. How long do I suggest taking classes before investing in your own wheel? I would say if you're taking classes, and you're interested in getting your own wheel and your own kiln, I would have some sales before you do that. You know, I would have some outlets that you know you can sell, whether it's in a local shop or you have an online store set up or you're whatever. I would just make sure that you have a little bit of source of revenue. But that's me, you know, I'm a business-minded person where I want to lower my risk at all costs. So I want to make sure that I have selling outlets before I invest any money, where if you're more of an artistic, creative person and you just want to make pots for fun, then that's up to you. Like when you want to invest money that you may never get back. So that's such a personal preference question. My pricing strategy has really evolved over time. I mean, right away I sold mugs for 12 bucks. And then, you know, at Mocha Monkey, I've sold mugs for anywhere from 15 up to 50. And then when I want to start selling online and shipping and packing and photographing, then, you know, looking at other potters that I respected their business model, both Joel Cherico and Kurt Hammerly and other people that I thought I respected. Yeah, the pricing strategy, I have a whole video about pricing, like supply and demand and your cost of goods and all that stuff. So if there's a good pricing video out there on my YouTube channel. Where did my sponge go? How do you dispose of clay properly? Well, most clay just comes right from the ground and it's mud. So, I mean, you can reclaim any clay that you don't finish. Like any clay that's in here, or like I got clay in there, you can use that again. Otherwise, like, clay just comes from the ground, so I don't really see a problem in it going back in the ground. Getting experience with kilns. I think, like anything, if you want to get experience in something, you just have to start learning about it. You have to start doing it. You have to, if you want to help out another potter, if you want to get a job or you want to take a class or whatever, you can learn that way, or you can watch videos and research. But eventually, like, the best way to learn is to just, you know, get your own and figure it out. Do I like throwing gauges? You know, I've never really had a gauge. I set one up after I got back from North Carolina for a while, and it was okay. I sell so many pots, like single one pot, that I don't feel like it's important that I have them all be the same, exactly the same. You know, like, these are probably within 1 ounce of each other and pretty close. So, but I think one of the really unique and cool parts about pottery is that every piece is not the exact same. I mean, if you want the exact same mug, you can get that for pretty inexpensive at Walmart or Target. So, no, I don't feel it's necessary to do a throwing gauge. I mean, I totally understand why people use them. Like, it's nice to just have like it's kind of a way to, just another way to turn your brain off and just get into the flow of throwing, is to just have, like, I'm gonna throw right to there and then boop, off. But throwing projects would I recommend for high school ceramic students? I mean, I think letting people explore their own creativity is great. I mean, letting people look online and see what other potters are doing, what they like, what they want to experiment with, and then let them go for it. Having options like glazes, if you do raku, that's always really fun for kids to experience. But just the repetition of things is really good for people's throwing. So if you have a project that's like you need to throw 10 things that are the same, or 20 things that all go together, or like a set of stuff, that's really good for your throwing to be able to do that. All right, I said I was going to change shape, and then I didn't. I just kept doing the spiral thing. So can you show us a step-by-step how to pull properly? Yeah, I can show you that. I'll just talk through it as I do it. So first step is to get it centered, obviously. I kind of use my finger there to make sure the outside's really centered. Then I go down in the middle with one finger, depending on how much clay it is and how stiff the clay is. Sometimes you can do 2 fingers or use your thumbs. So pulling, right away what I do when I pull is I go as far down as I can with this finger so I can get that clay up, because that clay right on the base is historically difficult. Some potters at the end of when they're throwing, they'll actually cut off some of that extra clay at the bottom, but I like to just get as much up as I can. And then you're just kind of pinching, squeezing as you go up. The first couple pulls are really important to just have it be really consistent. So not necessarily get up as much as you can on the first pull, but make it so that you're just in a position where now you can start to get a little more. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give for pulling is making sure that you're really centered. The more totally centered you are in the beginning, then the easier the rest of the process goes. If you can't get it perfectly centered right away. And then, like, you know, you shouldn't really need much more than 2 or 3 pulls for this amount of clay. For bigger stuff, you know. And I always feel like what I do is I taper it, so at the base I'm like trying to pull the most clay down here, and then as I get up to towards the top, you can always thin out that top part at the end of when you're throwing, but it's more difficult to get that clay from that bottom third up. So that's what you really want to focus on. Is that a good explanation of pulling? Sorry, I didn't think that too much through. Was it cool meeting Matthew? It was super cool. It was super fun. I loved North Carolina. Seagrove is awesome. The wood fire kiln is awesome. Am I going to build one? I'd say there's a 31% chance of building a kiln right now for me, and there's a 69% chance of not. How's that sound for specifics? I'd say there's a 47% chance of building a gas kiln, but I really love the electric kiln results that I'm getting. I think there's a lot more that I can still explore. I think I'm going to do some raku this summer. That'll be fun. Oh, I didn't do the spiral yet. I think that I want to go back to Seagrove maybe like once a year if Matthew will have me. That way I can just, you know, use his kiln, not have to build my own. Ha ha ha. Just kidding. Is it possible to start pottery on a budget? Certainly is. Certainly, I mean, you gotta find somewhere you can do it that has a wheel and a kiln, but you can do it for sure. Or you can find used equipment. Come back in July. Not quite yet. My go-to glaze combo or single glaze. I mean, if you follow what I do, I love the winterwood and sandstone as like the base glaze of a lot of the pots that I do. So I feel like, oops, got a little too wet on that one. Just pulling that wet slip off there. So pretty much any glaze, like the sandstone, I just splash so much slip onto my computer. Worst kiln disaster I've ever had. I had a kiln shelf break in one firing that I did. So everything like toppled in on that, and there was like 7 mugs that were all stuck together in this weird sculptural way, and that was probably the worst one. Madison Tooker is a fellow Gusty. Recommendations for finding and reaching out to more experienced potters to learn from. Yeah, it's not super easy. If you're a Gusty and you live around here and you want to reach out to me, I could always use a little more help. If you consider me an experienced potter. Otherwise, like, yeah, I mean, Matthew and I texted for a long time before I went out to North Carolina and helped him fire his kiln, and yeah, just building relationships with people. You know, Joel Cherico and I like have talked quite a bit recently and in the past. But right away, you know, I wasn't really anybody, and I had asked to go meet Joel a bunch of times, and he just was like, no, like, no thanks. But now we've talked and met a few times. I don't know. That's a good question. How much would you estimate a wood fire kiln? Like the cost of the wood fire kiln, Matthew thought if you bought everything was $50,000. 50 is what he thought that his kiln would cost to build. He did not pay that much, and I probably wouldn't pay that much either. I know the guys at the brick place, they said they'd give me a deal on the bricks, but not an inexpensive project, that is for sure. The kiln shelf that broke, I think, happened before I was doing YouTube, so. What do we at here? 56 minutes. All right, I think I'm gonna just cut her off at about an hour. So, if anybody has any super burning questions, there's my spiral action mug. I think I'm about ready to, my mouth is getting very dry. I need to go get something to drink. You see my non-dominant pointer finger. So your non-dominant pointer finger, so that would be like this finger that you're missing. Boom. Sorry, but all right, I think sorry if we missed out on the last little bit there, but thank you guys all so much for joining. Maybe we'll do every Thursday, or we'll see what happens. But this was fun. Thanks for all you guys' questions. Hopefully I answered it. If not, then join me on the next live video, which will come, I have no idea, but maybe next Thursday at 1:30 again. So, all right, as always, like, subscribe, all the things.